Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Fitzpatrick. This is my colleague to my left, Colin Ritzema. I'm sure we've been doing a lot of this lately, zooming through today's legal environment. This environment has changed. I recall we had a presentation with Judge Martha Anderson for the Oakland County in the court back in mid-March. And that was an in-person meeting. We were talking about the new discovery rules. And ever since then, things have really changed. And that was about 4 months ago now, almost 4 months, 3.5 months ago now. And so most of who are on this presentation today have probably participated in some webinar or web conferencing of some sort. And so we're going to be really talking about the perspective of legal proceedings as it relates to this remote environment. And so we are a full-service litigation support company. We actually have 2 offices here in Michigan, one in the southeast part of the state in West Bloomfield, and then here in downtown Grand Rapids as well. So we really pride ourselves on being a full-service litigation support company. We do nationwide court reporting and video services, computer forensics and electronic discovery, and trial support services, whether it be preparation of exhibits, electronic exhibits, or presentation actually in court. Colin actually does some of that work for us here. He was in Paris last year for an arbitration. Don't think that's going to probably happen this year, so but we'll see. So there's a lot of different video conferencing platforms out there, and they're really prevalent now because of this current environment. The one that we use is Zoom, and Zoom has been in our portfolio for about 5 years now since we started the business. So that's the platform that we use. We're using the Zoom platform right now, although we're using their webinar platform, which is a little bit different than the more traditional Zoom video conferencing platform. So there's some other ones out there: Cisco, GoToMeeting, Skype is kind of an older product that we don't see utilized that much, but and then Teams from Microsoft. So just so that there's lots of different options out there, but Zoom is our preferred platform.
And I want to offer everyone the opportunity as well throughout the duration of this presentation. Please feel free to use the Q&A chat box. You can type any questions that you may have, and we can address them either during the presentation or at the very end. And then I'll also add regarding these video conference solutions. We have some clients ask us about Zoom's security, and if it's really secure, or if one of these other alternatives would be more secure. Some clients have read articles that Cisco WebEx might be a more secure solution. And, so there's a lot of different articles talking about the security of each. And really, our conclusion is that Zoom is secure, and that, they all might have different nuances about the different encryptions and security measures that they take. But at the end of the day, we feel confident in the security of Zoom.
And I think, right when everyone was starting to get on these platforms, there was a lot of Zoom bombing, right? Where, these kids were home from school and they were just randomly typing in meeting IDs and popping into meetings. And so to circumvent that, we have applied a password for each meeting. So even if someone was able to miraculously come up with the meeting ID and type it into Zoom, they would still need that password. So there's that extra layer of protection. So we have not experienced any of that since we've been doing these for a few months now. And so we talked about, Zoom and video conferencing depositions are actually not new to our business. Most of you will probably participate in maybe more traditional video conference where you had a Polycom system in place, where you actually had to go to a court reporter's office or a law firm, and it was actually very expensive to do so. You might even think it was a little bit more cost effective to go there, considering how expensive these video conferencing traditional platforms were. So when we started our business back in 2015, we've been using Zoom ever since then. And what it has allowed us to do is really facilitate depositions anywhere in the world now. Anyone who wants to participate in a deposition really can just have a laptop with a webcam, and we can make it work.
And the difference between the traditional video conferencing that Sean was referring to and the web-based video conferencing, which is a Zoom, for example, is that a web, factor. And so the traditional video conferencing system uses an IP address. The web-based system uses the internet. And so it's removing a factor and removing some costs involved as well.
And so we saw actually an increase in video conferencing depositions, obviously during the stay-at-home order, because that's all anyone could do. If you wanted to facilitate a deposition, it had to be remote. And so we're seeing now a mixed bag. We're seeing some in-person depositions. We're seeing some half and half. And so we're still seeing an uptick in video conferencing depositions, and we expect that to continue. I think this has thrown a lot of people into this environment where they really had to adapt. And so for a lot of attorneys and clients out there that may not have even thought about this as a viable option, now it's becoming super easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of our clients are saying, wow, I don't think I'm going to be traveling to Los Angeles for a 2-hour deposition anymore, because this is so much more cost effective. So while we'll see an uptick in the way that we're facilitating these depositions, and they're becoming easier and easier to do. So depositions, as we said now, we're kind of in this phase where we're seeing some in-person depositions taking place. We're seeing 100% remote, and then we're seeing kind of a hybrid. And so this diagram here, as we talk about, there's all these different scenarios. And so what we like to do is test with each of these different individuals. And so if we're having a deposition where everyone's remote and we have 10 people involved, we're going to do tests with 10 different people. Now, a lot of attorneys are now getting more familiar and comfortable with this platform. So it might not be as needed to test with each attorney if they've been using this platform ever, consistently. But I do think for witnesses that are going to be appearing for depositions, trials, arbitrations, whatever it may be, we definitely want to test with each of those participants that maybe are not comfortable with this technology. We've even had to ship devices to people to help them facilitate these depositions.
Yeah, absolutely. And for example, just last week there was a witness that I was performing a test with to make sure that their device and bandwidth were going to be able to offer a successful connection. And we found out that they had 2 different computers. They both had built-in webcams, but neither webcam was working. And so we spent, quite a bit of time troubleshooting. They even had their tech support, from their company come on, and we concluded that the webcams were not going to function properly. We then proceeded to ship the witness a webcam from our office to be able to get through this deposition. And so, testing is absolutely imperative. And, even here when we look at the trial setup as well.
Yeah, so we've been seeing an uptick in remote trials, mainly in Texas. They've done a few, but we've always had, witnesses appear remotely even before COVID. So we've had experts appear in trial, with this Zoom platform. So again, it's in that situation, we definitely want to test with each of those experts or witnesses, especially in a trial setting where, it's a little bit, the stakes are a little more higher in that situation.
And for example, here, a few weeks ago, I participated in a remote hearing, evidentiary hearing in Marquette. And so instead of having to drive that 6 or so hours, I simply was able to participate via Zoom and to make sure that my clients were able to connect successfully as well. We all performed a test prior to practice the exhibit workflow and then make sure that we could all connect successfully.
Well, I think testing is a big terminology in today's environment, and that's no difference than what we're trying to do here. So what are the pros? So we've been doing this now 2-3 months, and these are some of the feedback that we've been getting from our clients. The travel time and cost. I mean, time is money. It's an opportunity cost to have to travel somewhere to appear in a deposition. So this allows all participants to really be more efficient with their time and do the deposition, the hearing, arbitration, or trial, and then move on to the next thing. Obviously, safety is a big concern. Our office has recently reopened, and we have protocols in place, and we're checking temperatures, and people are filling out forms. And so I don't think that's going to go away for a while. So obviously, if you're in the environment of your house or your office, the spread of the disease is not going to take place in those situations. While there's something to be said about being in person with someone and reading that body language, it is better than just telephone only. So at least in this platform, you can actually see and hear the individual. So what are some of the cons? There's security concerns about participants recording.
I'll touch on that. So, the recording feature in Zoom is easy to disable. The host, which is, in a deposition setting would be for its legal, we create it. In a trial setting would be the court, typically. But the host can control who has the ability to record. And so that is easy to disable. However, it is impossible to disable the ability for a participant to record from a third-party software. And so, for example, Adobe Captivate is an example of a software that you can download, and it's a screen capture recording software. And so you can, choose the screen that you want to record. If you have dual monitors, you could choose one of them. If there's only portion of the screen, you can actually minimize your box to a portion of the screen and then click record. And so, you could actually record an entire trial using a third-party software like Adobe Captivate, and that has nothing to do with pressing record in Zoom. And so no other participant would have knowledge of that. And so there is a security concern about that, and it's really more of a kind of an honor system where you need to all agree to play by the rules.
And I think we've been seeing a lot of clients will ask those questions. Is there anyone else in the room? Are you recording this? And so I think by asking those questions and at least getting it out there will help mitigate that. Another thing that we've been seeing, especially in situations where we have 10, 12, 15, 20 participants, is the patience to not talk over one another. It's
when you're doing an objection.
Right, exactly. And it's very common just to kind of interrupt and then everyone turns around, and when you're in person, and then you kind of move on from there, but it's more difficult.
And I think the reason it's more difficult is because of the internet, right? The fact that the internet is an additional factor means that there's a small lag involved. When you're talking, instead of me talking to Sean right here, I'm talking to him through the internet. And so now it takes that half a second or a second, or depending on the bandwidth, it might be a few seconds. And so that's why, we've seen during depositions when attorneys are placing objections, sometime the witness will continue to talk because of that internet lag that had occurred.
And so, we've been finding that it's, maybe not more difficult, but it's more challenging to communicate with clients or colleagues. For example, in a regular deposition setting, you would just simply walk out of the room, go into a different environment, and have your conversation in private. Now, it requires muting yourself. It requires, maybe calling, your client on the phone. There is a breakout room feature that we'll go over later, and we're finding this breakout feature more common in a mediation type setting rather than a deposition. So there is some consideration to how you're going to communicate with your client.
Well, and certainly, I can think of like a attorney and a corporate client sitting in the room together, and that client can write, notes or things like that and pass them to the attorney, where now it's, having to pick up the phone and text because they're not the ability to be right next to each other.
And there is that, built-in chat feature within Zoom, but then again, are those messages being saved, and now are those discoverable? And there's all those issues. We're not attorneys, but those are things to consider. And the last con, and this is why testing is so important, is the uncontrolled environment. When clients come to our office to take depositions there in our conference room, we have our internet set up, we have our speaker phones, we have an environment that is tested and proved. Now, we're seeing, individuals who are participating in depositions, mainly witnesses, in their basements, at their kitchen table, out on the patio. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of birds chirping in the background, right? And so when we test, we always ask the individuals to be in the environment they're going to be at when they actually take the deposition. So we can really start to control it. We test that audio, we test the quality, make sure that everything is golden on their end. But, at a certain point, we can only control what we can control. And so, I know a lot of kids are out for school right now, and so that is an added potential distraction as well. So pets. So there's lots of different considerations there.
So let's dig into the requirements of participating in a video conference. They're pretty minimal. The first is to have a computer with a webcam. And, if you're using a desktop computer, you will likely need to have an external webcam. It's only now that the desktops are sometime being built in with them. If you have a laptop, it'll likely have a built-in webcam. Just make sure that it's working. Again, we do run into very often where built-in webcams just are not functioning properly. We also do have participants that can connect with a tablet or an iPad, and that's also acceptable. We do, on the rare occasion, also have a witness that might participate from a phone, and it is, doable. We recommend a tablet or a laptop if possible, but if that's not, available, we have also had many successful depositions with simply using a phone for the video and the audio. And then finally, we recommend a strong internet connection. The bare minimum requirement is 1.5 megabytes per second. However, I don't think you can get a package that small from a provider. And so really, if you have anything above that, it should be sufficient for the video. However, if you have low bandwidth for your Wi-Fi, you will likely want to connect your audio through your phone, and that way you're not, using the Wi-Fi for the audio as well. And if there is a little bit of a lag or a bandwidth dip, your audio connection will still be seamless. So then we have a few considerations to think about when you're, going to be participating in your video conference. And the first consideration would be to choose your background. Things like natural lighting can kind of impede the video. It can cause a glare. A point here we oftentimes see on the news with reporters, or even, with our tests that we complete, where the participant is, having the video shown at their ceiling. And while it can maybe be convenient for the user, it certainly isn't very nice for the observer. So trying to tilt your camera so that it's more, straight at your face and against the wall for a background is recommended. And then the virtual backgrounds is an option as well that Zoom offers. However, we really don't recommend it for depositions. There can be, unless you have a green screen, there can sometimes be a little bit of a mix mash between the the actual person and the virtual background. It just doesn't always work as good as it is supposed to. And then the next point is to consider what you're dressing like. Certainly it's quite obvious to try and dress as if you were actually participating in that in person for that trial or deposition. And then think about any potential distractions. This is, going back to the slide prior where you're trying to, control your environment as much as you can. If you have pets or kids, try and, make sure you can control and make sure that they won't be, kind of bombing your Zoom meeting. And then we also have seen, people that have had alarms set in their background that have all of a sudden, gone off during the middle of a deposition, or a cell phone that's not muted. So just think about those type of considerations. I
dressed up today. I am wearing a suit and I put a tie on, and Lily, our 7-year-old, was asking me what I'm doing today because, I'm not putting as many ties on as I used to, but, I knew I was going to be in this environment. So I dressed up for everyone. So we talked about best practices. Obviously, testing, is critical. We went over that. So a lot of the questions that were being asked in today's, at least the deposition world, is how to display exhibits. I mean, that has come up virtually every single deposition we facilitated. And I think we have a great workflow that we're going to dive into here in just a minute. And we have some different options for displaying exhibits. So we'll go over those here in a minute. And then Colin, I know you use 3 monitors.
I do.
And so anyone that's going to see his workstation looks like he's going in for battle. But, having dual monitors really helps. And I think for, having kind of the Zoom meeting on one, maybe an exhibit on the other, or your outline or some sort, is very helpful.
And this is a workflow that we actually encourage clients to reach out to us and test with, is the dual monitors, because we can kind of, set up and practice that workflow where the client can have one screen that has all the participants with their video shown. And then even if a document is being displayed through the share screen feature, that client can have the second screen that is showing the displayed document. And so one screen has all the participants, the other has the displayed document, and it's all right there. And instead of having to have one screen where you're trying to split it and still see everybody, but also see the document in a smaller pane. And so that's something that we encourage. Reach out to us. We'll help you connect the monitors and then kind of work through that workflow.
So these are our options for sharing exhibits. And this, like I said, this is the question we get asked about the most. And so we've really tried to, hone our workflow on exhibit sharing. And I think we have a great one in place here. So the option one, obviously is the attorney to send to all participants prior to the deposition the exhibits. There's some, drawbacks to that. Obviously, there's some ease to doing that as well. So, it really depends on your situation. If these are exhibits that everyone has seen anyways, and, there's just a few of them, then it might make sense just to send them around. Typically what we like to do, and, it's our client's preference, is that they send them to us, and then we distribute them to everyone, and we say, all counsel copies, right? So there's not, the situation where, oh, geez, everyone's copied, and so we're not, responding back to each other like everyone's not there. So, so that's option number one. Option number two is really our recommended workflow, and what that entails is our clients send us the exhibits in PDF format. We then take these PDFs and we create a custom URL link. And what we're doing here is creating basically a custom exhibit index for our clients. And then we're using that in conjunction with the screen share feature. And so let's go to the next slide here, Colin, and kind of show.
So I'll dig into this.
Okay.
So again, the first step is that the attorney sends the exhibits electronically to us. We we ask to receive them the day prior. However, it doesn't need to be the day prior. We oftentimes are getting them the day of. It takes about a half hour on average to create the index. Of course, that depends on how many files there are. So again, the attorney sends us the files, and what we do then is we create an index similar to what is shown here below. So the index will have 3 or 4 columns, depending on how many files there are. In this example, we have 3 columns. The first column is the description column, which is simply the file name that the client sends us. So if the client had those files as a base number file name, that's what would be in the description column. The second column is the secure custom link that we create. And this is through our Dropbox account. It is secure, confidential, and only accessible to individuals that have this link. We can, if requested by the client, add a password protection to these links as well. However, we don't do that by default. The third column is a placeholder for the court reporter to be able to write in what exhibit number is actually marked during the deposition. So of course, not all of the exhibits might be introduced, and they might not all be marked. This workflow allows the exhibits that are not introduced to not be sent and distributed to the other participants.
And I think, Colin, for the links, you know, while we make those through our Dropbox account, the great thing about these custom URLs is that you don't have to have a Dropbox account or Adobe or any type of platform. All the client or the witness would need is simply their web browser. And once we send this link in through this chat feature in Zoom, they can simply click on that link.
Yeah, so no, exactly. So, you know, when an attorney is ready to introduce a new exhibit, they would simply look at their index. And I want to also preface that this index is confidential between our office and the client who sent us these exhibits. And so the attorney can simply look at the index, say, okay, let's put the forensic flyer in, copy that URL, and paste it in Zoom chat. Now everyone who's on the Zoom meeting can click that link and view the document. What the attorney will then proceed to do is to enable their share screen and also display that same document. Because really, we don't want the witness to have to download anything or use their mouse to be clicking around. The whole point is that the witness can sit back with their hands in their lap and have the document appear on the screen for them and kind of guide them to their next question. And so the share screen feature allows that to take place, where the attorney can simply click the share button here, which will then pop up this option of different screens. And this can get confusing because if you choose a specific application, like we see, I have an Adobe, an Outlook, a PowerPoint, a text file. If I chose one of those applications, it would share that application, but then it would not share anything else that I would maybe transition to on the screen. If you choose the screen 1 or the screen 2 option, that will then simply display everything that is on that specific screen. And so that is the option that we recommend, because it's just a little bit easier. And so then you simply click share, and the witness can view the document. Opposing counsel, for example, might want to click that URL link in chat to be able to scroll through and look at page 5 of the document when the attorney is using the share screen to display page 2. And so it gives the opposing counsel and other participants the ability to see the entirety of the document, not just what is being displayed. Then we have this ability to give the witness remote control access. And so we've been seeing this come in place more and more now, where the attorney can put up a document, locate to the appropriate page, and then give the witness remote control access using this button. So then the witness can scroll through the document, review it on their own, kind of control. And this can be a very great feature for lengthy documents, because otherwise the witness, of course, is having to dictate those controls and is having to ask next page, zoom in, things like that. So if they have control, it can sometimes just make things go more efficiently.
So Colin, can we go back to the index for just a moment? And so Colin talked about we create this custom exhibit index, and sometimes we have a fourth column. And what that is a control number. And so this comes into play when, you know, we had a recent deposition, there was 80 exhibits. And so by announcing the description of that particular exhibit would take some kind of searching still to try to find. Well, you know, if we have a control number in place, we can simply say, okay, control number 1, which is the trial services flyer, and, you know, then we'll mark it with the exhibit number, wherever that number may be. But, you know, we want to be able to quickly find these exhibits as well.
That's a great point, Sean, and I'll add to it as well, where, you know, we put it in the client's hands to decide what is going to make the most sense as far as referencing the exhibits. And what many clients have actually been doing is applying a control number or a tab number, and then moving forward to actually print those exhibits and prepare a binder for themselves with that same tab number. And so, you know, it can be very handy now where they have a binder with 40 tabs, and they simply say, okay, tab 5, and then our exhibit technician, if they're utilizing that, would be able to then locate and you know, populate that document. And so if tab numbers or you know, control numbers can be helpful, certainly that is a column that we add, and we're seeing it happen more frequently now.
And the advantage of doing this particular workflow is, one, it allows you to share exhibits as they're being introduced, right? So now we're not necessarily, you know, giving away the farm and showing every single exhibit. The second thing it allows you to do is have all the participants able to scroll through this document at their leisure, right? So if it's a 100-page contract, now they have access to that. They've, you know, opened it up through their web browser, and now can scroll through it at their leisure. And so then it takes away, well, can I get access to that document, right? And so now, you know, everyone has access to that same document. And so, like, this is a workflow that has been tried and true through this period. And let's go back to that first that slide about the different options. And so we talked about, you know, this is our recommended workflow. And some of our clients choose to, you know, simply use this workflow themselves, where, you know, they're enabling the screen share feature, they're copying and pasting that URL link into the chat feature, and they're off to the races. Now, a lot of our clients have chosen to use a technician, one of our technicians, to actually, you know, display the exhibits. And, you know, we utilize that workflow regardless if it's the attorney doing it, maybe a legal support professional within the law firm, or a courts legal technician. The workflow stays the same. It's just who's driving the bus changes. And so for clients that, you know what, we have 80 exhibits, I don't want to mess with it. You know, I just want to feel confident that they're being appropriately. Then they engage us to do that for them, and that's perfectly fine.
I'll also note too, lastly, that some clients don't see the need to implement the URLs in the deposition until the URL is requested by the opposing side. So you could technically proceed through the deposition just with the share screen feature, have everyone looking at the share screen, and then if for some reason there was a document that came up and the other you know, participant requested full access to it, it is very handy to have that index ready to go, where you can then simply copy paste the link in the Zoom chat when requested.
And like I said, we talked about this, the index is not shared with anyone outside of our firm, the court reporter who's actually will be doing the deposition, and the attorney that sent them to us. So you know, and our court reporters typically will print off that index and then simply mark the exhibits to keep track of themselves, which is great. So we're providing a lot of complimentary services throughout this pandemic. We want to be a partner with our clients in the law firm, especially within the Oakland County Bar Association, which has been just so supportive of our efforts. And so during this pandemic, we're providing this video conferencing platform, complimentary, and that involves all the testing, that involves kind of us jumping on prior to, that also includes the custom exhibit index and URL creation. So, you know, it's just great to have that index in place. Now you got to be a little bit more forward thinking, right? So like it's going to take a little bit more time from the attorney's perspective to get those exhibits ready. But, you know, we're going to create this nice index for you that, you know, keeps everyone nice and organized. And then we provide full text support. So even when the deposition goes off, you know, we're on that call, you know, or that audio to make sure everything goes smoothly. And if our clients have engaged us to actually present the exhibits, then obviously we'll, you know, be there the duration of the time. But we're on it more in a passive sense, even if we're not engaged to display the exhibit.
So the breakout room feature is a great tool that can be used to actually create private rooms within the main meeting. And so it's something that if, you know, interested to use, we like to kind of prepare it ahead of time, because that way we can, you know, decide how many breakout rooms do we need? Is it 2 or is it 3? And then which participants are going in which room? That way, when we set it up prior to the deposition, then when we're ready for a break, we can simply click, you know, start, and the breakout rooms will open. Those specific participants will go in their room and can have a private discussion before they are joined back together with everyone. And so this is something that the host controls, and it's very handy for mediations where you can have, you know, the 2 parties in private rooms, and then have the mediator jump back and forth as the host. And so this is a feature that, you know, we're happy to demo with anyone who's interested. I will note that for the typical deposition, during breaks, we are seeing participants simply mute their audio and stop their video instead of utilizing the breakout room, because the main, I guess, you know, potential disadvantage to the breakout room is that, you know, you need to know or have a agreed upon time to join back together, right? If you go on a break for 10 minutes and the host puts themselves in one room, then the host is deciding when to join everyone back together. And so if the host clicks, you know, close room a little bit too early, they might merge in with the other group who was having a private discussion still. And so, you know, there's a little bit of that consideration, but for mediations, it's more helpful. So one of the questions we get asked too is, you know, I'm used to doing real time for depositions. Can we still do that? Yes, you can. We can provide real-time capability still in a remote setting. So, you know, the same workflow, we create a link for the real-time that is username and password protected, that goes to the participants that will need access to that real-time. And then, you know, we always encourage you to jump in, you know, prior to make sure that the real time is working appropriately. But our clients have been loving it. You know, like they're sitting at home, they got their, you know, the real time going, they got their, you know, the visual via Zoom going, and so you can still get real time and have all those same capabilities like you were in the same room with the court reporter. The last thing I want to point out as well, and this goes back to the exhibit conversation, but I think it's very important, is that we do have a workflow as well for adding additional exhibits during the deposition that were not previously identified. And so again, you know, yes, we request that the exhibits be sent to us prior to the job, but we know that, you know, oftentimes during a lunch break or something, there might be some additional exhibits that will need to be used. And so we have a workflow for that. It's a shared Dropbox folder where the client can simply drag and drop the files to us, and then our technician can instantly create those URL links and share them with the participants. So that's there too.
That happens a lot, actually. So a lot of questions. A question we get asked frequently is about, you know, recording the video. And, you know, during this environment, you know, people have been using this terminology interchangeably. So there is a big difference between, you know, video conferencing a deposition and video recording a deposition. And so, you know, when we hear that terminology, we like to make the distinction, like, is it one or the other or both? And so, like, you know, a lot of clients are traditionally used to using, you know, a videographer to capture the video, and we can still do that here. We actually have a videographer that will, you know, sit on the Zoom deposition. They'll go on and off the record like they were at an actual deposition setting. And that's real nice because, you know, when you don't have that videographer, the video just records continuous. So now by, you know, going on and off the record, those hard stops, and it just makes a cleaner record. So they do apply those timestamps, and they're using a screen capture software to record the witness. And so really what we're able to do is spotlight the actual witness. And so whether there's 5 people, 10, 20 participants on the deposition, the videographer is actually spotlighting the witness. So it's going to look and feel more like a traditional deposition where, you know, the videographer is set up and it's on the witness at all times. And what's great about is we can still sync that transcript with the video, meaning we can still take that scrolling text, pair it up with the video, and so if you want to use it for trial purposes, it's ready to go. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So let's kind of transition now to you know, presentation for trials during this remote environment. And so right here, you see the picture. This is actually in our Grand Rapids office. We've actually set up a mock courtroom here. And it's getting lonely these days because no one's been in it for a few months. But, you know, Colin's one of our trial technicians. And so, you know, we've really had to pivot our, you know, our presentation to this more remote situation. So I'll pass the baton over here to Colin to kind of go over some exhibit presentation features within a remote environment.
Thanks, Sean. So yeah, I use the software called OnCue. It's a trial presentation software. A comparable, you know, alternative would be Trial Director that many people are familiar with. OnCue is kind of a newer, you know, alternative that I feel is a little bit more on the cutting edge for trial presentation. So here's a screenshot of OnCue, and this is specifically the transcript video clip portion, where you can see the blue highlighted text is an example of a video clip where you can simply highlight the text you want and then create a clip of that witness testimony. And then over on the right side, we see 2 screenshots, and these are examples of what it would actually look like when presenting a video clip, where you have the witness video and you can adjust how large the video is. And then you have the rolling text, which you can see in that top right demonstration there, where you have 16, you know, page 16, line 3 is highlighted in white. And then you also have the ability to populate an exhibit during this video clip, where, you know, then it can actually be shown what this witness was discussing. So that's an ability where, because we synchronize each video recording with the transcript, it gives us the ability to take this software and create video clips and actually then present them synchronized in court. We also, as we mentioned earlier, routinely are handling live witness testimony. And so, you know, previously we were looking at the pre-recorded version, but now, you know, we also will put technicians in the courtroom to facilitate a live witness testimony. And that can be whether it's a fully remote trial or hearing, or if it's in-person trial or hearing. There's, of course, if it's in person, you'll probably have to get the approval to have that witness appear remotely. But now we have here shown kind of the full view of what our trial presentation software looks like. And so this is the view of, the presenter mode. And so this is not what, the participants would be seeing, of course. This is what the technician is seeing. And we have many different options. I'm not going to go into each one. We could spend a separate hour going over the capabilities of this software or more. But really what this software allows us to do is take all the exhibits that the client anticipates that they might use and load them up, organize them, get them in different categories, according to what type of media they are, if it's a document, if it's a video, a transcript, so on. We can then prepare pre-made annotations, call-outs, highlights, and we can, do different demonstratives through here as well, timeline modes, the whole 9 yards.
And Colin, just to, interject here, I think like the preparation of these exhibits electronically is even more necessary now because, we don't have the luxury of walking in and using an Elmo or, having, trial boards to display. So especially in this environment where everything is being done remotely, having your exhibits electronically and having them ready to go is even that more imperative.
Absolutely. And so here would be an example of a side-by-side comparison. And now this is switched from, from the technician screen to now the presentation screen. This is what the participants would see. And so, just the other week during this evidentiary hearing that I participated in, I was using this software where I loaded up the client's exhibits and I did a few of these side-by-side comparisons where it's nice because you take away the mess of having the Adobe software or a Dropbox, a Word viewer, and now you have a clean presentation screen with just the documents that you want. We can also, of course, do call outs, highlighting, things like that. And so certainly if there's going to be a trial or an evidentiary hearing or something that's just a little bit more, substantive with the exhibits, engaging us and having a technician display them with a presentation, software like this would be a great decision.
And you can even, help them prep before.
Absolutely.
Or one of our other colleagues. So whether they have their exhibits and they want to put them into a nice PowerPoint to display themselves, or if they want, someone from our team to help display, really the workflow is not going to change much from your perspective as far as presenting the exhibits. You're just going to be in a different environment than you would be, in a trial or court setting. So, so we do have some questions that we can kind of jump into here, Colin. So you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a great one. They're asking about remote notarization, and if we have any a service that complies with the current requirements for allowing remote notarization. Yeah,
and I think the governor's order through June 30th on that.
That's my understanding.
So I think we got another week. But yeah, we've been doing remote notarization of documents. Colin could probably speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, and so what the state of Michigan has done for this interim period, it used to be that to do a remote notarization, there was only a few specific softwares that you could use, but that's not the case right now. What the state has done is allowed additional softwares like Zoom, for example, to be used. And so there's a few requirements that the notary needs to do. One of those requirements is to record a video of the notarization and actually keep it on their file for 10 years. And then, of course, they need to, identify and get the proper venue of the individual and things like that. But, you can do it. It is a service that we have been providing. And, we're really kind of just keeping up with the governor's orders to figure out when they will, not allow that anymore, and then they will switch back to just the 4 specific softwares that you can use.
Let's scroll up, Colin. See, let's look at some of these other. Okay.
Oh, here's a the virtual background. It's a great one. So next to the stop video button, you should all have the stop video option in your Zoom controls. There's a small arrow icon to the right. Click that arrow icon and you should have an option to choose virtual background. And so you can all take time to do that. And of course, right now your video is not showing, and so it's not going to be working. But go ahead and start a Zoom meeting afterwards and go to that little portion to choose a virtual background. And what we've done is we've actually created our own virtual background. We've taken our logo and put it in a special image that looks good. And so we do want to offer that to all clients, where if you have a specific firm logo or a specific image that you would like as a background, feel free to send it over to us and we can go ahead and format it to the specific specs that we have on file.
So we've gotten a couple of different questions about how do we charge for different things. And so for a deposition purposes, the video conferencing platform, the URL creation, the tech support is all complimentary. Now, if you choose to have a videographer on there is an hourly rate for the videographer's time. And the videographer can also really perform a dual role, where they're actually, video recording the deposition and presentation of the exhibits. And so really, there's going to be no additional charges beyond what you would typically pay in a normal deposition setting. And so what's great about being able to provide all this, additional services complimentary, is that there's going to be no financial impact to your client to proceed with these depositions. And so when we talk about, for trial presentation purposes, typically we're at, $150 to $175 an hour. In this environment, we're charging a little bit lower rate of $150 to do, trial or hearing presentation and, PowerPoint creation or, those types of things. So for those types of services, that is an hourly rate.
Here's a good question about, do you need permission from all parties to have an exhibit technician participate in a deposition?
That's a good question.
I'd say that's a great question. And I would say the answer is no, from my understanding. We've, obviously been the technician for hundreds of remote depositions at this point. And, it is my understanding that it is not, necessarily stipulated to or agreed on. However, I do think that it's oftentimes made known. And what I mean by that is, when we are engaged to do a deposition, we want to test with each participant, right? And so we're not just testing with our client who scheduled the deposition. We are also testing with that opposing side. And we are asking our client, how do you plan to share the exhibits? Would you like an exhibit technician to participate and assist? And if the answer is yes to that, then when we test with the opposing counsel, we are also explaining that workflow to them. And it's routine that when we are testing with these opposing sides, we are, explaining the likelihood of a technician being there, and displaying. And, to be honest, there has not been any sort of backlash on having the technician. And in fact, I think most of the time they are welcome the technician just for that added support.
So here's a good one too. Have you had any experience with participants having internet connectivity issues? Sure, absolutely. And so, that's why we're passively on these depositions, to make sure that, if there are any issues, that we can jump in. And a lot of times what we've seen is we've been then asking the participant to go from maybe their computer audio to a telephonic audio. And at least, if we're not relying on the audio via the internet, then it's a little bit more reliable when we switch them to the phone. So we try to troubleshoot it the best we can. to make sure. But a lot of this goes back to testing too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we actually ask, the participants to actually go in the environment they're going to be at for that test.
Well, not only that, but during the test, we ask the participant their familiarity with the interface. And what I mean is, we ask them, have you done Zoom meetings before? Have you used this device for those Zoom meetings? Have you regularly connected with computer audio for those meetings? Well, have you ever had an audio issue? If the answer is yes to that, and if they've had one audio issue while using computer audio in the past, then we are going to default to the safe side of using phone audio.
Mm-hmm.
If they said, yes, I use Zoom every single day for work, all day long, and have never once had an audio issue using my computer audio, well, we would probably be comfortable to say, well, that'll be sufficient. But then still acknowledging that if there is an issue, you would then have to switch to the phone.
So we have a few more minutes here. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Do you allow for a preparation of a client's recording to be made ready for trial, is a question. Yes, and so we actually take that recording through the remote platform and actually sync it up with the transcript. So the deliverable that our clients receive is really no different than what they've received previous to this.
And we have an interactive media player that we send to the clients. We have a special flash drive that has a media player. And so simply they put the flash drive in the computer, they double click the media player, and up pops the transcript on the left side and the witness video in the middle. And that media player is interactive and allows the client to simply highlight the transcript page and lines that they want to create clips with, and right click, create them as clips, export them to PowerPoint with the rolling text, things like that. And then what many clients do is simply print a transcript and highlight the clips that they would like created, and then they scan it and email it to me, and then I will create those clips in the software that we use. And so I guess another alternative way would be to simply just email the typed out list of page and line numbers for each clip.
And so again, we're here every step of the way with our clients to make sure that these are going off as smoothly as possible. If anyone has any additional questions, they can find us on our website, forthslegal.com. You email us, call us, whatever it may be. We're a small Michigan-based company, but we're doing big things, and I think our platform and our technology is up there with the biggest players in our space. And so we feel good about the direction of our business, and partnering with the OCBA to help educate and be there as a partner any step of the way. Let's see here.
I think that's about all the time we have. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us this afternoon, and we hope that we had some good information here to present. There will be a recording of this distributed afterwards, and so look out for that. And in case you missed a little bit of it, you can catch up then.
Great.
Thanks, and y'all have a great rest of your week.
Signing off. Thanks, guys.